So Veronica and I would like to warmly welcome everyone to our Sharing Languages webinar. For those of you who don't know, Sharing Languages is a community of researchers, educators, parents, and others, and we're really committed to advancing the quality of language and cultural education for young children. Throughout the year, we offer happy hours, which is an opportunity for teachers to exchange ideas around language and cultural diversity and multilingualism. And we also host webinars, and those are research-based. So the webinar we're presenting today is Building Multilingual Awareness in Preschool, Activities for Learning and Assessment. Veronica and I presented on this topic earlier this month. We were invited to give a talk on this research at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, here in the United States. And we thought this would be really relevant to the Sharing Languages community as well. All right, so let's get started. We can go to the next slide. So we're going to start this presentation by giving you a little bit of background, some information about the study and the rationale. And I know some folks just joined. If you wouldn't mind just putting yourselves on mute and just note that the presentation is being recorded as well. So we're going to start by giving you a little bit of background, and then we're also going to delve a little bit more deeply into one specific part of the research study that we conducted by focusing on exploration of languages through the shared book reading. We'll also then discuss some assessment ideas around these multilingual awareness activities that we designed, and then also have a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so just a little bit of background here. So in recent years, there have been calls at multiple levels, at the international level, the national level, and at state levels here in the United States, to really start building an appreciation of linguistic and cultural diversity starting in the early years. So the United Nations in 2015 released their Sustainable Development Goals, and Goal 4.7 aims to promote in all learners an appreciation of cultural diversity and culture's contribution to sustainable development. In the United States, the U.S. Department of Education released a framework for global and cultural competencies, and that framework has early learning descriptors. Those are targeted for early childhood contexts, and they encourage the promotion of emerging global awareness through exposure to diverse cultures, histories, languages, and perspectives. And then at the state level, again, here in the United States, the states have individual preschool teaching and learning standards or guidelines. And a number of these standards do call for raising awareness of languages, cultures, and diversity, again, in those preschool and pre-kindergarten contexts. And that includes standards in the state of New Jersey and Connecticut, where we conducted our research study. Now, we'd like to give you just a bit of a closer look at the state preschool standards, of course, for Connecticut and New Jersey, because that's where we conducted our study. But we also included Nevada. So the Connecticut and New Jersey standards, those were released about 10 years ago. But the state of Nevada has just newly revised their standards. They were released in 2023, and they'll be adopted officially by the state later this year. So we just wanted to include these three states because there really is a kind of trajectory from focusing on exposure to other languages and cultures in the early years to really like embracing a multilingual viewpoint in Nevada. So something common across all of these preschool standards in Connecticut, New Jersey, and Nevada is that there's a social studies standards that really focuses on linguistic and cultural diversity. New Jersey additionally has a world language standard, and in that standard, children are expected to know that people use different languages to communicate, and that children will also be able to express simple greetings, words, and phrases in a language other than their own. But these newly revised preschool standards in the state of Nevada really take it even further. It really embraces multilingualism. So there are 8 language and early literacy standards for that particular state. And for any and all of those 8 standards, children can use their full linguistic system to demonstrate mastery toward a standard or indicator. So they can use English or any other language that they speak. So again, I just want to really point out this trajectory from going from exposure, as we can see in Connecticut, to developing an understanding of other languages in New Jersey, to again, really embracing a multilingual viewpoint. So I just wanted to read this guiding principle from those Nevada standards to you. Multilingual skill building is an essential component of preschoolers' learning and play. Whether early childhood teachers are proficient in children's home languages or not, every effort should be made to reflect children's languages and language varieties during both instruction and play. So, we can see that there's really a trend towards multilingual awareness and towards embracing multilingualism, and that really precipitated or motivated our particular research study. So we wanted to start by giving you our definition of multilingual awareness that really was informed by the literature that's available. Now, the first definition that you see on the screen by Don Mull focuses on language awareness as a sensitivity to and conscious awareness of the nature of language and its role in human life. The next definition by Borg really focuses language awareness in terms of language teaching. So here, a language awareness approach in language teaching attempts to develop learners' explicit understanding of language, as well as an awareness of their own learning by involving them in discovery-oriented tasks that are both effectively and cognitively motivating. And more recently, Carney and Ahn point to the interdependence between language and cultural awareness in preschool context specifically. And all of these really informed our working definition of multilingual awareness, which is a sensitivity to and conscious awareness of the nature of language, as well as linguistic and cultural diversity in society. So back in 2022 or 2023, Veronica and I had conducted a survey of preschool teachers about their perceptions related to linguistic and cultural diversity and to world language learning. And we learned that the vast majority of these teachers, there were about 138 teachers, the vast majority of them really felt strongly that it was important to include that promotion of linguistic and cultural diversity in their preschool classrooms and to support world language learning for their students. However, they really lacked the resources and materials, so much so that they spent their own time and their own money in order to bring these concepts into their classroom. So this motivated Veronica and myself to work with preschool teachers in developing multilingual awareness activities with the goal of promoting multilingual awareness in preschool classrooms. So in 2022, we conducted a Language Awareness Day in the state of New Jersey. And then in 2023, we expanded on that and conducted a Language Awareness Week in the state of Connecticut. In both of those contexts, there was a shared book reading of a book called Say Hello by Rachel Isadora, and we're going to show you some pages from that in just a little bit. And then we also developed a number of activities related to that shared book reading, including an opportunity for students to draw how they felt about the story. And then in Connecticut, some additional activities, including an onomatopoeia game that really was informed by the research conducted by Monica Laurenceau, who's here in our webinar with us today. Additionally, we had reflections both in New Jersey and in Connecticut. In New Jersey, we had a small group discussion at the end of the Language Awareness Day and during the Language Awareness Week. Children, their parents, teachers, and the larger school community contributed to a mural of the languages of the community. And once again, all of these activities were co-designed by teachers and researchers because we really wanted to ensure these activities were appropriate for the students in their specific context.
Okay, so let's look a little bit at this shared book reading activity that we did in both contexts with the book Say Hello. So, shared book reading is basically an adult reading a book to a group of children, scaffolding comprehension with structured interactive techniques, and that adult usually directs children's attention to the illustrations and the printed texts in the books. Now, SBR, as shared book reading is usually abbreviated, has been commonly used in kindergartens and preschool classrooms as an activity to facilitate children's comprehension, vocabulary expansion, print knowledge, as well as oral language skills. And we have seen a large number of research studies from fields as different as educational psychology, speech pathology, early childhood education, and more recently, second and foreign language teaching. So they have all looked at shared book reading and basically came to the conclusion that teacher-led shared book reading strategies have been shown to be among the most powerful techniques an adult can use to develop children's language and literacy. However, despite all this flurry of research, we have relatively limited understanding of the actual mechanics of shared book reading. So, what is happening as teachers and students engage in that practice? So, from early childhood education, for instance, um, we heard from Pantamonti and Justice in 2010 that there's relatively little known regarding preschool teachers' use of specific scaffolds. And a meta-analysis conducted by Walsh and Hodge in 2016 noted a conspicuous lack of studies analyzing children's actual responses in the process. And then that being echoed in the area of second and foreign language teaching, Sandy Morao noted that picture books are an underused resource, and our recognition of the different responses and how they can support development of literary and understanding in L2 use is embryonic. So it seems like there's still quite a bit that needs to be done. In addition, what we noted is when we got into this, most of the research is conducted on monolingual picture books. So, picture books like Silly Billy, Goodnight Gorilla, The Very Hungry Caterpillar have been used in EFL education. But we have not been able to find any studies that featured multilingual picture books. And so we decided to look into that. Before I show you the study, though, I want to give you like the distinction that we have been making between bilingual and multilingual picture books. So bilingual picture books are usually books that present the same text in two languages. For instance, here, Finding Home, Buscando el Lugar. Whereas multilingual picture books include multiple languages throughout the text and the storyline. And those are the two that we used in our research, Say Hello by Rachel Isadora and Mung Mung, which is about different animal sounds in different languages. So I'll talk a little bit about the shared book reading where the teachers used Say Hello by Rachel Isadora. So in the story Say Hello, Carmelita, the girl on the left here, gets up early in the morning and helps her mama make their favorite breakfast, huevos con tocino. Today we visit Abuela Rosa, mama says. And so they set out to walk through a city and they stop by the different places, greeting people in various languages, such as here in the Japanese restaurant where they greet the owner with konnichiwa. And the Manny, the dog, always says woof, regardless of the situation. And so here they walk by the halal butchery, saying Al Salam Alaikum. And then eventually they make their way into a park where Carmelita meets her friends Max and Angel. And the nice thing here is that it's not only other languages, but also different varieties of saying hello in English. Here she greets them with hey, and they respond with yo or what's up. So that in a nutshell is the book, and then eventually they meet the grandmother. So our research questions in that shared book reading activity was what strategies do teachers use during a shared book reading using a multilingual children's book? Does the strategy use vary among teachers? And how do young children respond during shared book reading with a multilingual children's book? So in our exploratory study here, we conducted the data collection in spring 2022 and then again 2023. And this is a picture of one of our teachers reading the book to the students. Teacher one had 8 years of experience teaching preschool learners. She had 13 students total, read the book twice to the 3 to 4 year olds once, and then again to the 4 to 5 year old class with 5 students. And the children there in that suburban New Jersey preschool were mainly English language speakers with some had the home language of Spanish, and in parentheses ASL because they all yeah include ASL in the instruction in preschool contexts. And then the two teachers in Connecticut, they were very seasoned veteran teachers. One had 48 years of teaching experience, the other one 43, and they taught a different age group. So teacher two taught 3 to 4 year old students, teacher three, 6 year old students. And this preschool is located in an urban area in Connecticut next to a tier one university. So a lot of the students came from international backgrounds with parents who spoke other languages other than English. So there was a large mix of languages among those children, ranging from Chinese, Hebrew, Spanish, German, Portuguese, etc. So the data processing, once we had recorded the shared book readings, 6 of them total, we had a total of 72 minutes of audio recording with an average reading approximately 12 minutes long, but it varied quite a bit, as you see with the standard deviation. So we had one that was 9 minutes all the way up to 19. And what we did with those, we transcribed verbatim all of the recordings, which looked somewhat like this. So we transcribed it by turns. So we had a teacher turn and then student turns, etc., which and ended up with approximately 1,200 turns total over the entire data set. And then Lorraine and I looked for the analysis. We first looked at the literature to see what strategies are actually out there. What do we know? What teachers and potentially students already do? And then we double coded each of the shared book reading activity in a type of iterative process. So we went ahead with a list of strategies that we had identified, coded the first batch, and noted additional strategies that we came up along the way, conducted a consensus coding, went back to revise the previous one, and took the newly derived coding scheme into the next coding. So this is how that looked like at the very end. So you had the transcript, the double coding, and then we had a consensus coding designating the strategies as well as the student responses. The overall intercoder agreement was roughly 75%, with lower agreements in the beginning with a more exploratory turn and higher agreements towards the end of the coding process. And then as a final step, we translated the qualitative codes into numeric representations. So let's look at the teacher strategies. So here we drew upon the previous research, Lugosi, Pentimoni, Justice, and Schmidt et al., and noted these specific teacher strategies that were already known, basically. So teachers were found to sometimes ignore comments that students made, building on comments, expanding on them. They were reading from the text, the illustrations, they provided feedback. Print concepts were focused, as well as prediction and comprehension questions. And additional ones that we found in our research were pretty much language related at this point. So a lot of relational questions and statements were there, relating the content to the children's experiences or outside worlds, sharing personal experiences, emotional reactions, prompting children to say additional language words, which might be an artifact of this particular book, and providing additional knowledge, as well as positioning students into expert roles. And in the interest of time, I just want to show you two, how that looked like in the data, the relational questions and the positioning students into expert roles. So here are two excerpts from Teacher 2 and Teacher 3, featuring relational questions or statements. So Teacher 2 starts up with a let's listen, so prompting them to pay attention. Carmelita gets up early in the morning. She helps her mama make her favorite breakfast, huevos con tocino. Today we visit Abuela Rosa. So she reads from the text and then notices, who's Abuela? Do you know her? And then there's a short intermezzo with things that doesn't have any that don't have anything to do with our data collection about Iris. But and then a child chimes in, that means grandma. It means grandma, you're right. Whose grandma's called abuela? Eric. Eric, you're right. So she relates that language back to one of the students' personal context, as well as a context that the children knew from the daycare environment. And then teacher 3 does a similar thing where she says, remember the girl's name? Carmelita. And then the teacher goes on, I love her name, Carmelita. That's a Spanish name. Like Carmen's name is probably Carmelita when she was little. It means little Carmen. Do you think Carmen's mama called her Carmelita when she was little? Yeah. So here, what the teacher does is Carmen is the custodian of the school, so she relates that to the custodian and provides the additional linguistic knowledge that the suffix "ita" oftentimes serves as a diminutive form in Spanish. In terms of positioning students into expert roles, here's a longer excerpt where the teacher 3 in Connecticut had multiple languages around the table when she did the reading. And so she used one of the pages of the book for counting. So she had different kids count in their languages. And here we see Karin, who speaks Hebrew, count for everybody. So she says, Karine knows, go ahead, teach us. And then the child goes ahead, achat, and the teacher assumes the role of a student, echoing what was just being said, achat, shtaim, shtaim. No, not atam, shtaim. So she basically walks them through the number 1 through 5 in Hebrew, and then the teacher pulls it together saying, we did Hebrew and we did Chinese. Teach me, can you teach me the German way? So she goes on about that. So positioning the students into the role of experts. Now, what strategies do teachers use when reading aloud a multilingual picture books? That's a lot of text on this slide, and I just want to draw your attention to some of them here. So we have things in green here that look relatively comparable between the 3 and the 4 to 5-year-old groups. And then we have things that look rather different. So as you see, what is in parentheses is the percentage, and the actual numbers, the frequency counts. So there seem to be some sort of differences here across the various strategies, as well as similarities. So the answer to that question, teachers use a variety of strategies, but there seem to be some distinct differences between age groups and teachers. And so that leads us to the second research question, does the strategy use vary among teachers? And if we look at the 3 teachers here, one at a time, teacher 1 did 2 readings, as you remember, both to 4 or 5-year-olds and to 3 and 4-year-olds. And what we see here, she is a pretty steady Eddie. So basically using roughly the same number of strategies across the 2 groups. And also with regards to the individual strategies, there seem to be a lot of parallels. So a lot of relational questions that she poses, reading from the text was obviously the most prominent one, and then also providing feedback to student comments. Now, contrasting that with teacher 2, we see that there is a stark difference between her two readings to the 3 to 4 year old group. So again, some similarities, relational questions as well as feedback, but we also see a number of differences here in terms of the reading from the text. So interestingly, reading one featured a lot less reading from the text, whereas number two was really focused on reading. And then the first time reading was focused on print concepts with 10 instances, as well as comprehension questions that did not come up in the second reading at all. And then if we look at teacher three, it seems to be almost the opposite picture from teacher two, where she used 105 strategies the first time around and more than twice as many the second times around. So 241 strategies were noted in her second reading. So differences here were reading from the text or the illustration. So the first reading, she was much more focused on reading the text, while that decreased to only 10% of the entire reading experience the second time around. Also, what we see is she positioned the students into expert roles the second time around. So she was actually the one who is doing that. So there's a clear indicator that there are a lot of individual differences between teachers as well. So 20% of the time, she had the students in these roles and teach the class as well as herself. And a lot more prompting of the children to say things in the additional languages and repeat. Oh, okay, we're back. All right, so does the strategy use vary among teachers? That is a clear yes in our three case studies. So teachers vary considerably relative to one another, but also relative to themselves, given the number of readings they had done. Switching over to the children's response types, from earlier research, we know that children use analytical responses, including narrative meaning, analysis of illustrations, story language, as well as book as an object, and linguistic codes. There are intertextual responses that made references to other texts in the L1 or the L2, personal responses with personal experiences, transparent responses where they show genuine emotional responses to the book, and performative responses. So oftentimes where they use the book to goof off a little. And we found some strategies in addition to these in our data set, particularly regarding the analysis of linguistic code, which we could refine a little. So there were spontaneous translation instances where an additional language word or expression was translated into English. There was translating of peers' L1 comments, correcting peers when they mispronounce or use the wrong word, recognizing a word that sounds or looks similar to another, opinions about how difficult it is to say additional language words, and also recalling words and vocabulary, including language names. And then in terms of personal responses, there were previous experience in particular related to additional languages that we also found. And then again, might be an artifact of the book, echoing. So children participate in the read aloud process by repeating words that the teacher says. And what we also found that some of the children, even though none of the preschools taught reading, they did read individual words or sentences from the text and the illustrations. So I'll show you two instances here from the analysis of linguistic code in the data that we found interesting. One was the correcting peers. So that was from the excerpt you saw earlier, where the child, the Hebrew speaking child, was the expert in that moment. And she clearly um, notifies the teacher that no, not atam shtayim. And then the teacher is repeating the right word. And also interesting things where you can see kind of some sort of awareness emerging were similar sounding words. So the teacher reads the book. Carmelita gets up early in the morning. She helps her mama make their favorite breakfast, huevos con tocino. You know what that means? Egg, tocino. Oh, egg and toast. And the teacher, then responds, eggs and bacon. I had to look that one up, eggs and bacon. So, and then she goes on with abuela. What does that mean? Grandma. So here you can see toast. The child draws on his own experiences. Yep, you eat toast in the morning. So tocino sounds like toast. So you could see these budding awareness of language. So what we also see is like comparison to personal experiences that we thought were interesting, and I would like to show you some instances that we found here, in particular related to interjections in the additional language. So this was from teacher 3 who had a number of Chinese students, and before we started the data collection, they told us anecdotes that they were struggling a little because there were so many Chinese speakers. The children sometimes just switched to Chinese, and they, as the English language teachers, were just didn't know what to do anymore because they couldn't follow. And here's one instance where a child does that, and the teacher kind of reels it in a very nice way. So, oh, cool, yeah, it is. How about in Spanish? So she's trying to elicit buenos dias, and the child goes, and I apologize if there's any Chinese speakers on this webinar, wo bi jiao. It starts with a B. Bue. No, when I say wo bi jiao, that means I don't know in Chinese. Wo bi jiao means I don't know in Chinese. Who can say it? Wo bi jiao. And then everybody repeats it, wo bi jiao. Now we know how to say I don't know. I love that. Wo bi jiao. And buenos dias in Spanish. Who remembers the Italian? So, and then she reels it back into the book. That's a very nice way of how she allows for that excursion, but coming back. Um, So yeah, there is a number of strategies that and response types that we found among the children that they used. So echoing was one of the most frequently used ones. Personal responses featured highly, but then analysis of linguistic codes was also highly up there. So there's a clear focus on language and a new one, the reading from the text and the illustrations. So overall, there, at least at first glance, there's a variety of responses out there, and there is a clear language focus that is being highlighted in the reading of multilingual, on this multilingual picture books. So some responses might be clearly related to age, such as the reading from the text, as well as the approach taken by the teachers. So those are further avenues that we believe research should look into. So taking stock at this exploratory study, teachers approach the shared book reading of multilingual picture books in a variety of ways. And there's a lot of intervariability as well as intravariability among teachers. So it allows them to focus on a content topic, but also on multiple languages. So drawing in the languages that the children speak and also building relations to the community, the children's families, and their home languages. And what we notice in the data is it also kind of had an effect on teachers. And here's an excerpt where the teacher too reflected on the greetings in different languages. And she says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to have to say it more often. I don't use it very often, and I should because there's a lot of people saying it like that." And they were talking about ni hao with all the Chinese students. And so she says, "You know what? How about when you guys come in the morning, instead of saying hello, you can say your favorite way, and that would remind me to say it. I like shalom." And so, knowing from anecdotal evidence, because my own child goes to that daycare, they have been using different greetings since we did that data collection there. So that's kind of a nice finding. Um, so yeah, there's a variety of responses, but a focus on language in the student responses that we found, and a feeling of being accepted as a whole that came along with this entire research. And one interesting angle is we've been asked a lot about how do you assess this? How do you go about it? And we believe that shared book reading can be used as a basis for observational assessment. So as a way of assessing these newly emergent features in the standards and in the curriculum. Give you an idea, this is a look into the New Jersey state standards where they clearly want the children to be able to acknowledge that a language other than their own is being spoken or used. For example, in a story, or they should be able to say simple greetings, words, and phrases in a language other than their own. And that's something that you can easily elicit, as we've seen here, for instance, the names of the languages versus how you say it, where the teacher says, Abuela Rosa is waiting for them. What language does Abuela speak? Hola. So you can see that distinction between the language as an abstract concept and how you say something is still developing. But they get it right and like they say, oh yeah, it's Spanish. Spanish, right. Hola. At the same time, you can also use it in order to find out more about the children's home language context. As we see here, where the teacher was reading through the different greetings, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, and then one of the children pipes up and says, we say assalamu alaikum. Do you at home? Yes, I didn't know that. So that's also some insights that you can use as a teacher in order to obtain a more comprehensive picture of your students. And how to say that, how to observe or kind of collect data for assessment purposes in a more systematic way would be to use these new descriptors from the standards and design observation sheets as well as kind of dichotomous item types, whether a child is or is not able to do something. So in a way, it gives a new research field a push because there is so far no assessments out there that are readily available for this type of new construct. One thing that we did for assessment was we wanted to know how kids feel about it because that we felt was a huge aspect of this entire endeavor with different languages, especially for the New Jersey context, being relatively new. So it hadn't been addressed in class. And so we had kids draw their emotions after reading the book Say Hello. And here's a drawing of a boy from a boy aged 4. He was super thrilled that all of his languages, English and Spanish, were in the book. But something that also showed us that this is, as much as we hype up multilingual awareness and it's a great thing, we also need to be mindful of potential monolingual students who may feel like this little 3-year-old girl who said, I feel sad because I don't understand other languages. So that's just as a reminder that we kind of need to pick up the kids where they stand and build bridges between those languages. And here's a nice resource that we came across, Guided Drawing with Multilingual Preschoolers. This is a book that came out last year from Teachers College Columbia. It has really nice practical ideas around this assessment of emotional drawing. So pathway forward. We believe there's a lot to be done, and we just scratched the tip of the iceberg here. So more research in the area of shared book reading, particularly with bilingual and multilingual books, should be done. Questions such as, are certain strategies that teachers use more conducive to multilingual awareness raising than others? And do potentially teachers vary relative to their seniority or novice to the profession? So we've had pretty veteran teachers, maybe novice teachers fare very differently, and they may provide insights into professional development needs that could allow teachers to be more proficient with shared book readings. Additionally, there's a lot of space for developing new activities and assessments for this new construct. So that's probably going to be a research strand that we will see and hopefully see in the near future. And professional development communities like we try to foster with sharing languages are, we believe, very important because neither research nor educators can walk this alone. And so in that sense, there's a lot of work in progress, a lot that is to be done. And I thank you very much for your attention.